Mirror, mirror on the wall, which is the fairest Oktoberfest beer of them all? Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, it is finally time to find out which of the, well, 5, awkwardly, not 6, of the Oktoberfest beers is actually the best. 5 because in the UK, as of right now, at the time of recording, which is quite important, only 5 of the actual 6 were available. The Augustiner so far not yet, but this is the last of the 5 that I can get right now. The Löwenbräu. We don't actually know whether the 6 will become internationally available at this point. We assume yes, but we don't know when. So we're going to hold off from declaring an absolute winner in this video. But towards the end of this video, we should have an idea of at least who is definitely in the lead. For reference, this on screen now is the leaderboard so far. As I'm recording it, I can't actually remember who's where exactly, but I'm pretty confident Paul Arner's sat up at the top, and either Spartan or Hacker-Shaw are down at the bottom. Those two may even be tied, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, those two at the bottom, Paul Arner at the top. And this Löwenbräu, I've heard from many people, was their favourite of last year. So yeah, I guess we're going to find out if it lives up to expectation or not this time around. So far in this series, we've been progressively getting lower in ABV every single time, unintentionally. It was just the order they came out in. But today, we trump that rule because this is 6.1%. So yeah, it's one of the heaviest hitters by far. This is, as I said, the Löwenbräu München Oktoberfest beer. In this instance, quick look at the bottle for you. The Oktoberfest beer is set as a single word. I mean, it's as trad as you get in terms of a layout and design for a bottle, but it does look very nice indeed. And yeah, it's an Oktoberfest beer, so you know the deal. Let's get into it. As always in this series, we'll be testing these beers in an unconventional drinking vessel. You have to go back and look at one of the previous reviews as to why that is, because simply I've said it too many times now, but this is the glass it's going in. Freshly washed and rinsed, as you can probably tell. But yeah, I'm excited. Oktoberfest beer is still boiling hot here today as it was in my previous video. Yeah, cold beer is definitely the way forward. So aroma on opening is good, not as strong as some, but certainly better than others. Oh, a nice bright lager, this one. Nowhere near as dark as the Hacker-Shaw we had before. And as I'm doing with all of these beers, I'm going to get some in the glass, slightly aggressive pour as I've done to get some of that carbonation moved, and then we'll let it settle down, put the rest of the beer in and test it as an entire entity with all the beer in the glass at once. So once that happens, we shall resume. And it is done. That is the entire beer in the glass. It's a nice golden colour, but it has got this... Ooh, now I'll hold it up to the light. I'm going to take that back. I was going to say it has this nice, slightly golden, richer colour to it, but right in the light, it does drop back to this slightly more yellowy hued lager. Not a bad thing. I always just prefer this style beer to be a little bit darker, more orangey for some reason, but it doesn't make any difference. The head on it, it's been the most lively beer so far by some margin, but those bubbles are quite broken up. They're kind of dissipating quite quickly. When I first poured it in, I thought, oh, we're onto a winner here. I thought this might take the clean sweep for appearance, but actually, in hindsight, that's starting to wither down a little bit too. The majority of beers have scored a 9 on the visual in this series so far, and I think, based on that slightly dilapidated head, we're going to have to do the same. There's nothing much wrong with it, otherwise it looks very clean, very appetizing, but yeah, it's another 9 on appearance, which I'm not going to say definitely is the same over all of them, but I'm pretty sure it is. So yeah, maybe the visual wasn't worth marking on, but you never know. You never know. So aromas. See, this is another one that's not really giving a lot away on the aroma, other than I think the Paul Arner and the Hacker-Shaw to some degree. All of them have been quite subdued when it comes to smell. It's quite bright, fresh. This one a bit more grassy. The malt is coming through, but it's subtle. But it's also distinctly a little different to all the others. It's coming across like baked cookie. Like a lot of them are quite bready or sometimes a bit donutty, but this one, more like crisp, sweet baked goods for some reason. And as with a lot of them, the mineral note on the nose is massive. This one, not very tinny though, not very metallic, which is a good sign. It's mineral forward, but not tinny, which is the kind of the mineral element that, whilst is acceptable, you don't want loads and loads of. So, bit subdued, but otherwise very nice. And as you've probably guessed, as a result of that, it's another 9 for the aroma. Oof, do excuse me, it is roasting in here once again, so I'm going to get gradually pinker and pinker as this goes on. I'm going to end up matching the lights behind me by the end, I reckon, but it's hot, this is cold. Let's get into it. Cheers. Ooh, now, ooh, this is up there. I can tell already, this is really a very good beer. Things that stick out immediately, the mouthfeel feels better than I think all of the others have. It's got this really nice slick, it's not thick, but just this extra lux to the actual physical sensation of the beer in the mouth. The booziness, it's interesting, it's not masked, but it's not over the top either. It doesn't necessarily taste 6.1%, but given how few ingredients are in here and everything else, it has masked it a little bit to the point where you go, this is warming, a little warming. It's definitely boozy, but it's not offensively so. It's just, yeah, I don't know, nicely done at that point. A lot of the others either didn't mask it well enough at all or masked it completely, if that makes sense. Like this has got a nice balance going on with that little bit of a prickly booze hit. Slightly grassy, slightly lemony from the hop, and the malt profile on this is distinctly, it's like bran cereal heavy, which I have said about at least one of the others. It's definitely not bready, it's not thick, it's not overdoing it. It's curious this, because it's both kind of less refreshing than some in the fact that the carbonation's not super spritzy and it's got that slightly warmer, boozier element, but at the same time, the freshness of the actual flavour is really very refreshing indeed. So, yeah, far from a bad one. Right then, quick top to bottom taste test so we can try and work out where this ranks with the others. And I'll be honest, at this point in time, it is just going up against the Paulaner because that was my favourite to this point in time. But I'm undecided, I'm torn. I don't know quite where this is going to go yet. So initially, light carbonation, good amount of bitterness on the front of the tongue. Not a lot else though, I have to say. And then kind of first third, bitterness continues but dials down. In its place comes a bit of malt profile, but it's really soft, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel cheap like some of them have. It doesn't feel uninteresting. It just feels low key. So just some nice low key malt flavours. It's not particularly bready, as I said about the aroma. It's just, yeah. I mean, sorry about the taste earlier, but yeah, it's got this kind of. I'll be honest, it's pure malt. It's not cereal heavy, it's not bready, it's not donutty, it's not too sweet. It's just beer malt, which I don't hate. It's what it is. It doesn't have to taste like something else. Going into the mid phase, bitterness continues at a nice low level. It seems to be starting off kind of not really strong, but in, you know, as strong as you'd want in this type of beer, and then tails off all the way through. In that mid phase, it starts to get replaced by the other flavours from the hop, which is doing the bittering in the first place. As I said before, it's very grassy, slightly lemony, lemongrass-ish a bit. Mild though, subdued, a little bit of generic sweetness. It's not particularly malty at that point. But what is important is that despite maybe I'm not raving about it, and there's no big kind of pick-out flavours that are incredible, the balance is absolutely there. And back of the tongue, that bitterness actually does pick up again a little bit. The lemon is more concentrated. It's quite hoppy, actually, that back bit. Not intensely so, it's not very green, the grassiness goes away, but yeah, a bit of a citrus hit. That's kind of hyper refreshing. And then on the aftertaste, all of the mineral note then comes in, followed by a relatively squashed, but very enjoyable, kind of all bran, sweet, kind of like, think like sweet bran flakes, if that makes any sense. It's got that kind of quality to it, and it's very enjoyable. It's got the full raft of flavours for this beer style. They're not necessarily all my favourite interpretations of those flavours, but it is very well put together and it is very well balanced. It is possibly losing a little bit of intensity in some places and could have a bit too much in others, but overall, I mean, yeah, it's really, really a very, very good beer. But I think, as you've probably guessed already, if you've watched all of the other videos, that my excitement for this is not what it was for the Paulaner, and as a result, it hasn't beaten it or matched it. As I recall, the Paulaner got 9s all the way through. The taste on this just isn't quite there. Hold on a minute. I gave the Paulaner a mark down purely for conditioning. And I said the flavour effectively was fantastic. I actually think the conditioning on this, despite the head not being there, the mouthfeel, the body on the beer, everything else, is actually enough to keep that point in. But I would like a bit more malt character in this. And that is the only thing I can say about it. So on a pure mark scale, it's straight 9s across the board for the Löwenbräu as well. But I do need to point out that despite them being even, for me personally, I think the Paulaner is a better beer. But if you're a big IPA fan and prefer a few more zesty, spritzy, bitter notes, the Löwenbräu actually might be the one for you to go for, which is interesting. Yeah, it's fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic, but it's just not tickling me the same way that the Paulaner did. But you could do far, far worse than buying this beer. I think that's very fair to say. This is absolutely delicious. Right then, so scores on the screen now. This is where everything is at so far. In theory, we have a tie at the front, and I think we have a tie or near tie at the end. I can't quite remember, but you can see it on screen now. So as a result, you know, that's basically it. If you're more of a maltier beer fan, go for the Paulaner. If you prefer a bit more hop character, go for the Löwenbräu. And truthfully, if you get the option, just try all of them. There is not a bad beer here. I've just got to rate them on something. And hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll be able to pick up one of the Augustiner Oktoberfest beers for 2023 and finally put the argument to bed about which one is actually the greatest. But that's where we're at right now. Fingers crossed this will happen in a future episode. And if not, well, you've had your results already. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.